Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, greetings to all of us, whom I respect, the chairman of the seminar committee, Mr. Sensidar SPD MED EDD, Sekretaris Mr. Dr. Lasundra SPD MHum, Seminar Coordinator Mr. Khairil Anwar Korompot MA PhD, Konsultan 1 Profesor Dr. Basa Jabu MHum, Konsultan 2, Mr. Dr. Haji Geminestiti Sakir, SPD, MPD. Examiner 1, Mr. Profesor Dr. Syarifuddin Dola, MPD. Examiner 2, Mr. Muhammad Miftah Fauzan, SPD, MPD. Thank you for watching this proposal video presentation, and thank you also to my friends who have come here to watch and support me here. Today, Friday, July 8, 2022, I'm Ulfa Kurnia Citra, majoring in English Education, will present my proposal with the title A Comparative Study on the Student's Perception on the Effectiveness of English Language Skills of English Language Students During Online Learning and Face-to-Face Learning. There are 3 chapters that I will present to my proposal, and I will start for the first chapter, which is Introduction. This chapter covers background, problem statements, objectives of the research, and significances of the research. Okay, the first, background. During the COVID-19 pandemic, this began to subside. Many things have started to return to normal. Likewise, with the education system in lectures. However, some universities still carried out integrated learning by implementing online learning and face-to-face learning. Its flexibility allows teachers and students to have choices about how and where they can spend their time to study. In some ways, it is important to note that blended learning such as distance learning also produces uncertain outcomes for students. This is done to prevent the spread of the virus and ensure whether this learning system is effective for students, especially students of English education, where they have to develop their English. As we know, students majoring in English need a highly integrated or effective learning system to support or develop their English. The current learning system is carried out in a combined manner. The problem is that there are still some students who complain about online learning and some complain about face-to-face learning. The problem is that not all students are the same. We know the balance of perception between different students, what learning system they like. This is because there are students who prefer online learning and also prefer face-to-face learning. Students assume that one of these learning systems is implemented will develop the effectiveness of developing their English skills. One solution is with student perceptions. With student perception, it is very necessary because it can provide an overview of the learning system they like. By conducting this research, it can provide benefits by taking action to maintain students' opinions or perception of phenomena in lectures, especially those concerning learning systems that attract students to develop special skills in their majors. English education students. In this study, the effectiveness of English language education students' language skills will be explained in writing regarding to learning processes, namely online learning and face-to-face learning, from the opinions of English education students. The shift from face-to-face teaching to virtual classroom creates new challenges and effects. This is certainly a big mark for the effectiveness of students' learning. Various responses and perception can be found through students regarding the two learning processes, especially to students of English education, where their perception about the effectiveness of language skills on online learning system and face-to-face learning system. This study will focus on students' perception of English education regarding the system or process of online learning and face-to-face learning. In addition, online learning environments can offer learners opportunities for flexibility, interaction, and collaboration. It's according by Denali SP General 2013. Advances in information technology in 21st century have greatly changed our education system. Internet use in teaching and learning has become more common in higher education. About online learning has actually been used for a long time. E-learning to growth of online education has been driven primarily by state-aid online programs such as the Florida Virtual School, Michigan Virtual School, Idaho Digital Learning School Academy, and Virtual Virginia, and full-time online schools such as Chester and Contract School affiliated with K-12 Institute. In general, the two learning processes can be compared to online learning and face-to-face learning. There are reasons why learning systems are the best. In addition, Pat also classified 5 reasons why online learning is better than face-to-face learning. Demand digital content, less time commitment, tracking of learning patterns, high retention rates, and social learning collaboration. Students' learning experiences and responses to distant learning are very much needed to be known and investigated. But face-to-face learning is also very important for English education students, where they are majoring in foreign languages and their education. A foreign language or English will be more easily mastered if the learning is practiced, one of which is the ability to speak English. According to Castine, speaking is a productive skill because it generates ideas, messages, and suggestions, and people need to practice them. An education where students are taught about the rules of education or teaching, which also requires direct B. Problem statements. After describing the description of the problems and looking at the current state of the learning systems, namely the combined learning system, which includes online classes and face-to-face classes, especially English education study programs, it can be concluded that the problem to be studied in the study is: what are students' perception of online learning? What are students' perception of face-to-face learning? Which learning system is better for effective English language skills? Okay, now, objectives of the research. In accordance with the research problems, the researcher conducted research with the aim of, first, to obtain information about students' perception of English education regarding online learning systems and face-to-face learning systems. And last, between online learning and face-to-face learning, what learning system is effective for the effectiveness of their English skills? By conducting this research, the researcher will summarize students' perception into a data conclusion that is in accordance with Alex's opinions, which states that perception is the process of receiving, selecting, organizing, interpreting, evaluating, and reacting to stimuli or essence. And the last on this chapter, significance of the research. Regarding this significant research, there are 2 of them of theoretical significance and practical significance. The first, theoretical significance. The study will provide additional knowledge regarding the perception of online learning system and face-to-face learning and their effectiveness of language skills obtained from the opinions of English education students. 2, practicals of significance. There are some parts of practicals of significance. The first, for students, the results of this study can be used by students as a reference for their educational research in the future and can also help students understand both the online learning and process and face-to-face learning. 2, for lecturers. With this research, it will help teachers or lecturers to more easily understand what learning process students prefer from students' perception to online learning system and face-to-face learning systems. And this can enable learning objectives to be easily achieved. And last, for other researchers. Provide additional further reference for other researchers who will conduct research in related research fields. Okay, now we are in Chapter 2, Literature Review. This chapter presents some pertinent ideas and conceptual framework. Okay, first, now we're going to talk about pertinent ideas. In this section, the research will explain the theory of perceptions, English language skills, online learning, and face-to-face learning. First, perception. Definition of perception. Perception is the process used by individuals in managing and interpreting their sensory impression in order to give meaning to their environment. Another opinion from Sugiartono suggests that perception is the ability of the brain to translate a stimulus or processes to translate a stimulus that enters the human sense. In governing human perception, we can compare two objects and it can be led to the advantages and disadvantages of each object that can be a comparison. From the two definitions above, it can be concluded that perception is the process of presenting a discussion or object that relates to the human senses. Factors affecting perception. In his book, Organizational Behavior states that perception is influenced by three factors. The first, perceiver. An individual looks at the target and tries to interpret what he sees. Then the interpretation is influenced by the personal characteristics of the perpetrators of the perception themselves, including attitudes, needs, interests, experience, and expectations. Second, object. The characteristic in the object to be absorbed can affect what perceived by someone. Novelty, sound, size, background, proximity, and similarity of an object can be shaped the way we see things. Okay, the last, situation. Changes or differences in time, place, work setting, and circumstances, social settings, can lead to different perceptions of something. Types of perception. Perception is divided into three, namely perception of the object, physical environment, perception of the object respond to external properties, and perception of human or social. These three types of perception have differences. First, perception of object through physical symbols, while the humans through verbal and non-verbal symbols. Humans are more effective than most objects and more difficult to predict. The second, perception of object respond to external properties, while humans respond to external and internal characteristics such as feelings, motives, hopes, and so on. And the last, objects do not react while humans react. In other words, objects are static while humans are dynamic. Therefore, the perception of humans can change from time to time, faster than the perception of objects. Okay, there are several important principles regarding social perception. The first, perception based on experience, namely human perception of a person, object, or event, and their reaction to those things based on their past experience and learning related to similar people, object, or events. The second, perception is selective. Every human being often gets sensory stimulation. Our attention to a stimulus is the main factors that determines our selectivity for the stimulus. Perception is conjectural, occurs because the data we obtain about objects are never complete. So this presumptive process of perception allows us to interpret an object with a more complete meaning from any point of view. 4. Perception is evaluative. This means that most of us say that what we perceive is something real. However, sometimes our senses and perception deceive us to that we also doubt how close our perception is to the actual reality. And the last, perception is contextual. It means that all the influences in our perception, context is one of the most powerful influences. When we see a person, an object, or an event, the context of the stimulus greatly influences the cognitive structure, expectation, and therefore our perception. Okay, general characteristics of perception. In order to produce a meaningful sense, there are certainly general characteristics in perception. These characteristics are as follows. First, modality. The stimuli received must be in accordance with the modality of each sense, namely the basic sensory properties of each sense, like for sight, smell for smell, temperature for taste, sound for hearing, surface properties for touch, and so on. Second, dimension of speech. Perception has the nature of speech. or dimensional space. We can say top-down, log height, narrow area, foreground, background, and so on. Third, time dimension. Perception has a time dimension, such as fast and slow, young and old, and so on. 4. Context structure. A unified whole, object, or phenomena in a world of observation have a structure that is unified with their context. And the last, a word of meaning. Perception is a word of meaning. We tend to make observation or perception of the phenomena that have meaning for us, which have something to do with us. Okay, perception aspects. There are 3 perception aspects. First, cognitive component. Components that are composed on the basis of knowledge or information that a person has about the object of his attitude. From this knowledge, a certain belief will be formed about the object of the attitude. The second, affective component. Affective relates to the feelings of pleasure and displeasure, so it is evaluative, which is closely related to cultural values or its value system. And the last, cognitive components. It is a person's readiness to behave in relation to the object of his attitude. Okay, now I'm going to talk about English language skills. English is a very important language to master because, as we know, that English is designated as an international language, meaning that English is the main language that must be mastered. In this era of globalization, English is very important because language is a bridge to socialize with various kinds of great people. To master English, one must master several skills, especially for non-native speakers. This is because English is unique, namely the letters and how to read them are different, especially for Indonesians. So, many differences both in terms of reading letters and word order. Therefore, it is important to master English skills. Now, skills in English. These 4 abilities to maximize English to get significant results. Okay, the first, listening. Listening is very important in learning any language. By listening, we can imitate something and increases our accuracy when speaking. The way to learn to listen effectively. That is to pay attention not only to the content of speech, but also how it is clear. Okay, the second, talking. Most people find it difficult to start a conversation in English because they are not used to it. Therefore, it is important to frequently practice English in your daily life. Don't be afraid to make mistakes because it is a natural part of the learning process. Okay, the second, reading. Although Indonesian people's interest in reading is low, reading is an activity that can support your language learning process faster because it makes your mind accustomed to interpreting sentences, phrases, and other idioms. Also, by reading, you will learn more about grammar, tenses, and sentence structure. And the last, writing. Writing is a challenge for most Indonesian people, but with a title, will, and discipline, anyone can get used to it. By writing, you will memorize the vocabulary that you have read before. When writing, especially for formal writing, your grammar skill will be put to the full test. Okay, now online learning. Definition of online learning. Online learning is a distance learning system that has been implemented for a long time. Online learning is one form of distance learning or distance education that has long been a part of the American education system and has become the largest distance learning sector in recent years. Online learning relies on the internet so that teaching and the participant being taught can be connected to each other, and that is where the learning and teach process occurs. Kinds of online learning. The first, Google Class. Google Classroom is a web-based bold learning application created to facilitate learning activities between teachers and students without having to meet face-to-face. Google Classroom is a service from Google for Education to assist communication activities between teachers and students in learning. Google Classroom supports teachers to see which students have progressed and have not completed assignments and can immediately provide real-time grades and feedback. And the second, Animaker. Animaker is a platform that can be used by teachers in making animated videos of learning materials. This application can make it easier for teachers to spread even complex material without having face-to-face. The third, Edmodo. This education-based service launched by US technology company can be used by teachers to share content, distribute quizzes, distribute assignments, and manage communication between teachers to submit reports directly to parents. 4. Zoom. One of the most popular apps these days is Zoom. Zoom supports fully supporting distance learning by delivering subject matter that can be conveyed to students, so that learning can be carried out in two directions and students can immediately provide feedback on the material presented. And the last, Edpuzzle. Edpuzzle is a platform that can help you choose learning videos, help teachers choose vote, and can add a question to be used as a basis for quizzes. The benefits of online learning. Online learning is learning that can be done at home without even going to a learning place, and of course, this is a benefit for students or the teaching team. The advantages of website online learning according to Rusman. The first allows everyone to learn anything without being restricted space and time, because access is available anytime, anywhere in the whole world. The second, the operational cost of each student to participate in learning activities become more affordable. The third, supervision of students' progress is made easier. 4. Web-based learning design allows for personalized learning activities. And the last, learning materials can be updated more easily. According to Wena, the benefits of e-learning can be categorized based on 3 points of view. The first, students' point of view. E-learning can make students' learning activities more flexible. Students can access learning at any time and repeatedly. Smaldino said that the online learning model is able to realize an effective learning function, even according to Maxwell and Asher. In addition, students can also interact with the teacher at any time. So when there are questions or feel unclear, students can directly ask the teacher. This is very different from conventional learning, where the process of teaching and learning activities must be carried out at the right time and place. In addition, according to Sukriyanto, there are several advantages of e-learning compared to conventional learning. The disadvantages of web-based e-learning according to Munir. First, lack of interaction between teachers and students, as well as between students with one another. This happens because in web-based learning, classes are conducted virtually, so that the interaction is still lacking. Second, sometimes more focused on the technological aspect than educational aspect. E-learning products are the result of technological advantages, so that there are still many users who have not paid attention to the educational aspect used in them. The learning process will be hampered. The third, if the teacher does not know and master the strategies, methods, and techniques of information technology-based learning, it is necessary for teachers who understand today's technological advantages so that the learning carried out remains up to date. 4. Very much needed motivation and high independent learning ability from the learner himself. 5. Not all students can take advantage of all internet facilities. This is because not all schools have complete facilities that students can use to access the internet. 6. There are still limited availabilities of software. Not all software used to develop e-learning can be obtained easily by teachers. 7. There is still a lack of knowledge and ability to operate computers and internet probably. This is because there are still differences in the ability and understanding of students and teachers in operating computers and the internet. Okay, online learning method. There are 2 types or methods of delivering online learning: synchronous and asynchronous. Synchronous learning is a type where online learning is carried out at the same time. This allows direct interaction between teachers and students via the internet. In short, this type of online learning is almost the same as direct learning in the classroom, but the class is virtual and uses internet-connected media or technology. Asynchronous is the opposite of synchronous, that is not at the same time. So, between lecturers and students do not have to access the online learning system at the same time. Students can start studying, submit assignments, discuss and complete class or lecture administration at any time, although not at the same time as the creation or writing of material and assignments carried out by lecturers. An example of this asynchronous learning method is the use of learning management systems such as Google Classroom, Psychology, Edmodo, and others. Okay, now we are in the last pertinent ideas. It is face-to-face learning. The first definition of face-to-face learning. Face-to-face learning is a learning process that is carried out directly between teachers and students. Face-to-face learning allows for direct or face-to-face interaction between educators and students, so that it can be said that students can more easily digest the material given because teachers and students are directly involved in giving and receiving learning knowledge. Okay, kinds of face-to-face learning media. The first, LCD. Percentages run sequentially as a straight line, so that can be called linear media. It is usually used when the number of audience is more than 1%. For example, it can be realized in the form of an ACD. Okay, the second, whiteboard. The blackboard or whiteboard is also a learning tool that can be categorized as a learning medium, because the blackboard is used to convey information and used to convey subject matter. The blackboard or whiteboard is probably the most common and frequently used medium in learning. Teachers will feel that something is missing in the classroom if there is no whiteboard or blackboard. Okay, laptop. Laptop as advanced technology have many benefits and uses, especially in the field of education. Laptops have several inputs that can be used, including the use of a laptop as a video or audio player or search of information if connected to the internet. Okay, benefits of face-to-face learning. In general, the benefits of face-to-face learning include: first, improve hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills and soft skills are two very important abilities for everyone, especially for students. Hard skills are abilities that can be obtained from the process of training, repetition, and education. With face-to-face learning, students' hard skills will, of course, be very well honed, while soft skills are the ability of communication, personal characteristic, and natural intelligence that the person has. By attending classes directly, the soft skills for students can be further developed because social interaction increases all the time. Second, more interactive learning. Face-to-face learning, of course, makes learning more interactive because students interact directly, thus making it easier for students to understand the material provided. The third, meet lots of friends. Interacting with people can be easier now, even online, but it's not effective because after all, meetings are better face-to-face. With face-to-face learning, we can meet directly with classmates and be able to establish better relationships. 4. Facing a more productive morning. Making yourself more productive is one of the steps that can make yourself grow. Face-to-face learning makes this possible because you have to get up every morning to go to where the learning process takes place, receive lessons directly, do assignments together, group discussion, and much more. Disadvantages of face-to-face learning. The disadvantages of face-to-face learning include: first, the weakness of face-to-face learning is the learning process. What happens is limited by space and time, so that learning is felt to be less than optional by educators, according to Sari. Second, Face-to-face learning is classroom learning that relies on the presence of teaching lecturers to teach in class. In face-to-face learning, students engage in spontaneous verbal communication in a permanent physical environment. According to Norman, one of the problems in the traditional face-to-face learning is that it requires higher tuition fees, especially at well-known universities. Nevertheless, the presence of students in face-to-face classroom learning is not the end concern of higher education institutions, but the main concern is more on the relationship between the presence of these students and the satisfaction of the students themselves in participating in the learning being studied. Face-to-face learning steps. According by journal Kanban, the general steps of face-to-face learning. The first, the teacher conveys the objectives, background information of the lesson, and prepares student learning readiness. 2. The teacher demonstrates the concept skills or provides step-by-step information. Third, the teacher plans and provides initial training guidance. And the last, the teacher checks on the success of students doing assignments well, providing feedback. B. Conceptual Framework. In Conceptual Framework, there are perception, English skills, online learning, and face-to-face learning. With the Conceptual Framework above, it provides an overview of the flow of the research, arranged based on the theory and problems in the research, in accordance with the title of the study, the perception of students, especially students of English education study programs, regarding their English skills during online learning and face-to-face learning. The Conceptual Framework also indirectly describes the problems in the research regarding the comparison of the two research objects of online learning and face-to-face learning, which contains its advantages and disadvantages both of them. This can be a reference for students' perception, especially English education majors. Chapter 3, Research Method. Okay, this chapter will present research design, data researcher, population and subjects, techniques of collecting data, data analysis, instrument of the research, and data validity. Okay, first, research design. In accordance with the title of the research, this research uses a type of research with qualitative methods, where qualitative methods are methods that describe results directively by analyzing individual or group phenomena. According to Denson and Lincoln, usually quoted in the literature, qualitative research study things in their natural settings, trying to understand or interpret phenomena in terms of the meanings that people bring to them. While the type of research that will be used is case study research, where the researcher observes a group and presents it directively. From this observation, it will be concluded in the form of the theory. B. Data researches. This research will be conducted at Makassar State University, Faculty of Language and Literature, Malengkeri Street Raya, Parantambung, Kecamatan Tamalate, Makassar City, South Sulawesi, 1920-24. In accordance with the title of this study, this research focuses on the students majoring in English education class 2020. The reasons for choosing the place and research participants is because Makassar State University students, namely the language and literature faculty majoring in English education class 2020 in the coronavirus outbreak, began to subside and campuses began to slowly implementing offline learning methods. As we know, the 2020 batch of students who have felt the impact of the coronavirus outbreak since they started enrolling as students of English education at Makassar State University and underwent online learning, then returned to the study with the offline learning system in 2022 at this time. This, of course, can be a comparison of the effectiveness of their abilities, their English during their online learning, and now has returned to offline learning. Okay, C. Population and subject. This study will present the opinions of students majoring in English education class 2020 Makassar University. Therefore, the researcher will collect data from each class consisting of 4 classes A, B, C, D. At least 10 students from each classes expressed their opinions. To determine the subject in the study, the researcher decided to use a purposive sampling technique, which is where the purposive sampling technique, also called assessment sampling, is the intentional choice of participant because of the qualities that the participant proposes. It is a non-randomized technique that does not require an underlying theory or a number of participants. Simply put, the research decides what needs to be known and sets out to find people who can and are willing to provide information based on knowledge and experience. It is usually used in qualitative research to identify and select information-rich cases for the most appropriate utilization of available resources. By using this technique, the researcher will determine the participant who will be examined according to the research criteria so that informants for this research can provide accurate research results. Of collecting data. Data collection techniques in the study play a very important role because knowing research techniques and of course collecting data and result will be able to be well directed and provide good research results. Below are data collection techniques that will be carried out in the study as follows. First, observation. According to Rianto, observation is a data collection method that uses direct and indirect observation. Observation is an act of observing an object that will be the focus of the research. In the study, the research will make observation on the thing. Observation is an act of observing an object that will be the focus of research. In the study, the researcher will make observation on the 2020 class of English education students, namely observing them during the offline learning process. By doing the observation, the researcher will see the fact information directly. Nasution said that observation is the basis of all science. Scientists can only work based on data, namely facts about the real world obtained through observation. Second, interview. Interview is an interaction activity carried out by someone who wants to information and someone who provides information with the aim of getting information for phenomenon or research. In the study, researcher will conduct interviews with research subject, which can be two options according to the situation, namely face-to-face learning or online by telephone or audio. And the last, documentation. Documentation is the process of collecting evidence of an activity in the form of electronic images and printed images. During the research, the researcher will collect evidence of the research process by taking pictures during the offline learning process and online learning. Okay, data analysis. Might suggest 3 stages that must be done in analyzing qualitative research data. The first, data reduction, data display, and conclusion drawing or verifying. First, data reduction. Sugiono says that reduction data means summarizing, choosing the aim things, focusing on the important things, looking for themes and patterns. The data that has been reduced will make it easier for a researcher to obtain clearer data information and collate it. And second, data display. Prastawa says that the presentation of the data here is a set of structured information that provides the possibility of drawing conclusion and taking action. Analysis of qualitative research data is carried out by organizing the data, breaking it down into units, synthesizing it, compiling it into a pattern, choosing which ones are important and which ones will be studied so that conclusion can be drawn to be conveyed to others. And the last, conclusion drawing or verifying. Gunawan explains that the conclusions are presented in the form of descriptive research object based on research studies. The initial conclusion put forward are still temporary and will change if no strong evidence is found to support the next data collection stage. So, in this study, the analysis will collect data repeatedly to ensure there is no change in the perception of the research subject about online learning and face-to-face learning. Okay, now instruments of the research. The instrument of the research is in the form of interviews. The interview aims to obtain information about the perception of English education students towards online learning system and face-to-face learning systems. By making observation, researcher will see factual information directly, namely seeing the students' learning process during online learning and face-to-face learning. Documentation is carried out as a form of evidence that the research is actually realized. Okay, the last of this chapter, data validity. The validity of the data in qualitative research includes stats credibility, transferability, and confirmability. First, credibility. The credibility test is carried out so that the research carried out is not doubtful. In conducting this credibility test, there are several steps. The first, extension of observation, which is where the research returns to the field, again conduct interviews with the informants to check whether there are new data sources. 2. Increase accuracy in research where this is done to check or control the processing of the data that is created, presented, and collected is correct or not. Third, triangulation. Wiersma said that triangulation is credibility testing is defined as checking data from various sources at various times. Thus, there's triangulation of sources, triangulation of data collection techniques, and time. 4. Analysis of negative cases, namely by analyzing or checking if there are different data or sources of information. If there are no more data that are different of collected, with the findings meaning they still get data that conducting the data found, the researcher might change his findings. 5. Using reference materials in research reports, it is better if the data presented needs to be accompanied by PODA's authentic documents so that they become more reliable. 6. Conduct member check. The purpose of member check is not find out how far the data obtained is not accordance with what is provided by the data provider. So the purpose of member check is that the information obtained and will be used in writing reports is in accordance with what is meant by the data source or informant. 2. Transferability. Transferability is external validity in qualitative research. External validity indicates the degree of accuracy or applicability of the research result to the population where the sample was taken. And the last, confirmability. Confirmability or confirmed from the research, that is if the result of a confirmed research related to the purpose and function of the research. The validity of the data can be seen from the result of the study which do not differ between the data obtained from the research and the phenomena that actually occur in the object of the research. Okay, that's all my proposal's presentation. More and less, please forgive me. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.